Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council, October 8, 2018. Prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting, I would like to remind anyone in our audience who would like to speak to any of the items on our agenda this evening, or if you'd like to speak to the public hearing section of our meeting tonight, to kindly fill out a speaker request form in the back of the room, and our city clerk, Lynn Fazekas, as she just did just now, will give that to me, and we'll see that you're put on the agenda at the appropriate time. Having said that, roll call, please.
Jacobson.
Here.
Finucane.
Here.
Marquardt.
Here.
Fagan.
Here.
Noriko.
Here.
Verbeck.
Here.
Favor.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. I'd like to call our police officer on duty tonight, Keith Erke, to please come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. She's still our grand old flag. She just moved a little bit tonight from over here. Okay. We do have a couple of items, I understand, that may lead to some changes on our agenda tonight. Are there additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Alderman Jacobson.
I'd like to make a motion we remove item G5, resolution 2018-133, authorizing an architectural improvement program incentive for the property located at 110 through 124 East Hillcrest Drive. The applicant has asked to table that item until further discussion can be had. I'd also like to move item G7 under our items for separate action up to item G1 at the request of the group requesting that item, and it is resolution 2018-135 authorizing a communications site lease agreement with Kishwaukee Amateur Radio Club for space on the city's west water tower located at 1505 West Lincoln Highway, including land for equipment, rights-of-way for ingress, egress, and the installation and maintenance of utility wires, poles, cables, and conduits.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Jacobson, seconded by Alderman Noriko, that we remove item 5 on our regular agenda and move item number 7 to a new place on the agenda, number 1. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please. Roll call.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Finucane.
Yes.
Marquardt.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noriko.
Yes.
Verbeck.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Our agenda is approved. Okay, tonight we do have a public hearing, and this public hearing is opening at 6:04 p.m. Proposed Central Business District Tax Increment Financing, otherwise affectionately known as TIF. And I'd like to have our Economic Development Planner, Jason Michnick, to sort of provide a lay of the land on why we're having this public hearing and what led up to this actually a continuation of a public hearing. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to provide comment in regards to the consideration for the proposed Central Business District TIF. This process started in December of last year when Council authorized a feasibility study with SB Friedman for a proposed new TIF district in the downtown area. SB Friedman engaged in doing the eligibility study, development of the redevelopment plan and project, and also a housing impact study for the proposed district. A public meeting was held on June 27th, which was purely informational and provided with residents and the TIF and the general public with an opportunity to come and hear the results of that eligibility study and also ask questions. The Joint Review Board, which is a meeting of all the taxing districts that are impacted or have overlapping jurisdictions in the proposed TIF, also met several times. First on August 7th, were unable to make a formal recommendation during that meeting, requested to return to September 4th and continue that discussion. Again, they were unable to come forward with a formal recommendation to Council. They did meet on September 7th, which was only a few days before the first public hearing date, which was posted for September 10th. The JRB did request at that September 7th to continue their discussions for another 30 days, and that is the reason why on September 10th, Council did continue the original public hearing for the proposed TIF, which resulted in us reconvening that public hearing to this evening. The results of the eligibility study per SB Friedman did find that the proposed TIF district did meet the requirements of the Illinois TIF Act to designate the area as a proposed TIF. Looking at the area, they found that it did meet the requirements of a conservation TIF, which means that more than a 50% portion of the properties and buildings in the proposed TIF were greater than 35 years in age. The results of the conservation area finding meant that only 4 of the eligibility factors needed to be met in the area. And the 4 factors that they determined met the eligibility study were a lack of growth in equalized assessed valuation, and that's compared to the remainder of the community. So they found that in of the 3 tests that they ran, 4 out of the 5 periods showed a decline in EAV or a greater decline than the remaining years or the remaining balance of the community in 5 out of the 5 years. They also found that of the 279 parcels in the proposed district, 240 of them met the findings for deterioration, which are things like building cracks in actual buildings, also surface improvements such as parking lots, streets, and sidewalks. The third factor that they found the eligibility were structures below minimum code, with the city recently updating their building codes to the 2015 standards. Only 2 of the structures in the proposed district meet all of the requirements under those building codes, meaning that 99% of the buildings were below current building code standards. The last finding that met the eligibility was inadequate utilities. In working with our partners at the Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District, we found that a majority of the sanitary system in the downtown was beyond its useful life. So they did find that 4 of the eligibility factors were met, and therefore the eligibility for the proposed TIF district was valid. So at this point, the purpose of, again, is to provide the public with an opportunity to give you comment. No action will be taken tonight in regards to the proposed TIF district. After tonight's public hearing, we do anticipate that the Joint Review Board will be reconvening again sometime in the next couple of weeks for them to actually provide council with a formal recommendation in regards to the new TIF. And the date for when we would be bringing forward ordinances for final consideration is still to be determined based on that meeting date with the Joint Review Board. So at this point, I would turn it over to the public to provide comments, and then I'll be back up here to answer any questions of council.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. That is an excellent review of where we've gone on this particular TIF issue. We do have two folks who have indicated that they would like to speak to the public hearing. We also have three folks who I will review here in just a few moments who sent in some written statements regarding this particular public hearing. Our first person who's asked to speak is Glen Gardner. Glen?
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll try to talk very quickly because there's really a lot to say. 1976 was the year I was already out of college, but 1976 was the year I bought my first building. I own several buildings in downtown DeKalb. If any of you else in the room go back that far, you will know that once upon a time downtown DeKalb was as thriving as any downtown area could have ever been. You could virtually do every bit of your shopping in downtown DeKalb and never even have to get into a car. And that does speak volumes. I also live in Florida, so I travel a lot, but I spend about a third of my time here now. I would like to say that in the last month, I've traveled a great deal of time to Rochelle, and I spent a great deal of time in Sycamore. And folks, they are rocking. They are really doing the right thing, and they have it in place, and they are making significant progress. With that being said, because I've seen so much transition, and I think I speak with a degree, maybe not of authority, but I certainly speak with a degree of history, I would invite anyone in the city council, to come visit or talk with me privately, or I would meet with you to review the things that I've witnessed. But this isn't about Glen anyway, because the glass is half empty for me. This is about the future growth and development of DeKalb. It is not easy to be in business. It is not easy to be a landlord, and costs only continually keep going up and up and up. We've talked about the historical significance of DeKalb, and if you've been here as long as I have or longer, you've noticed that a whole lot of wonderful buildings have been torn down under protest. It's because a whole lot of people can't afford to maintain them easily. It's very expensive to maintain these properties. But one of my buildings happens to be Phineas Vaughn's original blacksmith shop. It's the east building right in the corner off of 3rd, and he actually made the first prototype barbed wire for Glidden in that building. Now, to me, that's historical significance, much greater than the McKay building, which is the building next to it, which is loaded with historical value going back to virtually the turn of the century. We need to unite. We need to get together. We need to understand that the future, not the past, but the future depends on economic development. For that to happen, the old days, you could never say, can I get some assistance? Actually, when I went in business, you had to put 10, 20, 30% down, and you actually had to earn all of it. Things have changed. Inflation is going wild. But the TIF program is designed to support economic growth and development for years to come. I've heard a lot of things said about the Pappas project. I've known John a long time. He's not a personal friend, but I give him all the credit in the world because it took great risk to take on these tasks. And the reason I'm here particularly is to address any question privately or publicly, because I will be available, but also to understand that this TIF program, even though some people aren't in favor of it, for DeKalb to continue to grow and not have more walkways between the blocks that became alleys because we couldn't maintain the older buildings, has to change. I don't know how many historical significant buildings are left, but I do know the ones they've torn down. And if we don't make a change soon to help with this, because of the cost of doing business, we're going to have a bunch of brand new buildings with no historical significance, and one day our kids are going to look back and say, where did it all go? So please think long and hard about the contribution the TIF program will have to our community, because it's significantly important based on today's climate, because the economy of scale is no longer simple. It used to be you just got up and went to work and you could make a living. Now you have to be very creative. Success is now a planned chain of events. It is no longer just a coincidence because I got up a little earlier than the guy before me. So the assistance would be greatly appreciated. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Goring. Pam Verbeck.
Well, as we all know, TIF is not just one subject. Both the existing TIF and the proposed new TIF have a lot of areas that overlap with each other. So some of my comments aren't directly aimed at the proposed TIF, but bear with me for a minute. This is a very short comments. Not too many months ago, the staff held meetings for each of the wards that are in the existing TIFs to talk to the people about what they would like to see done with the estimated $11 million or so that was not committed to any projects for the balance of the TIF, existing TIFs. So their answers for the use of those funds have been listed many times in the council's backup material that was for property rehab, street sidewalks, flood control, and so forth. And heaven only knows I love the mayor when he says this, that we've kicked the can down the street for so many years, not making a decision as to what to do with the city hall. All right, so this is a very nice building, but we do know that it needs some upgrade, probably first and foremost the HVA system. So what I'm leading to is back to that $11 million that seems to be kind of up for grabs here. There's been some talk in discussing the creation of the new TIF that we have some disgruntled taxing bodies that think maybe that they should have a certain amount of money returned to them. I've never been involved in the discussion of that, but I believe that would be a great disservice to the taxpayers because the taxing bodies are already currently getting a 50% surplus per agreement when the TIF 1 was extended. So I would like to see that money turned around and used as it was intended to be used. Now, how that relates to the proposed new tax TIF district is, looms the big question, how are we going to fund the new TIF district? That can be done in a couple of different ways, but first and foremost, you might be looking at transferring money from the existing TIF over into the new TIF to as initial funding, recapturing increased assessed valuation on specifically the Pappas buildings. We'll put a couple of dollars into that fund, but we're talking, like Mr. Goring was saying, we're talking about lots and lots and lots of money that would be needed if we were going to get into rehabbing the historical buildings. And I question exactly where that money is going to come from. So again, the reason that I think it is not time for a new TIF now is that we have many things concerning the existing TIFs to make decisions on and complete. And we can do a new TIF later and start with $1 and save towards future spending, but I don't think this is a time for a new TIF. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. John Anderson? And John is the last person who has indicated a desire to speak to our public hearing tonight. Did you fill out a speaker request form? I did not. Okay, we'll get you on, Bessie. John?
First, I want to thank you for inviting the public to speak on this issue. And just as record, when the state of Illinois passed this financing law, it was intended to increase the tax base of depressed properties. But can you believe that in Chicago, the Sears Tower covers 1 square block? It's a separate TIF district, and it's a newer building. I just don't know when the state made this law if they knew what they were doing. But anyway, to get back to local issues, we'll go back to the time, and I don't know the exact dates, when City of DeKalb tore down the old post office on First and Lincoln Highway. And it hurt a lot of people's feelings, but really that building was full of poison. The pigeons that lived in the attic for years there would create a terrible disease if a person got involved in that area. But anyway, after they tore that down, they had to relocate two businesses that were south of that. And that left Walgreens with property from the railroad right away south to Lincoln Highway, which we can see that's in shape now. I don't remember the dollar amount, but it must have been pretty huge for Walgreens. And it wasn't too long after that took place, they went to Elburn. Elburn was growing, and they wanted to build a store over there. And they said, well, sure, you go right ahead and build it, but you're doing it on your own. They didn't have any money for them. And a few years after that, they did the same thing in Sycamore. Walgreens is a very busy business. It's a good business to be invested in. But anyway, then in 2008, when they started the big project downtown here, and they decided to put in those brick pavers on 2nd and 3rd Street, also the Van Buren parking lot. They, I don't know, I think they planned about $18 or $20 million for the whole project. New street lights, and all from 1st to 4th Street. And then they wanted to get rid of the electric poles on Locust. So they took ComEd, gave them a pretty high price, and they got them jewed down to $3 million, which is a lot of money to remove telephone poles on Locust Street, which really isn't Main Street. But they figured they had a little money left over, so they paid for all the new seats in the Egyptian Theater with the balance. Now, now, one of the things they did that kind of backfired was they bought a lot on Locust Street and built an ice skating rink. And that kind of fizzled. And they also bought and tore down a small store on Lincoln Highway that's only 12 foot wide and made a path to go from Lincoln Highway down to the Van Buren parking lot. So there was three properties that were taken off of the tax rolls to do all this work. And yeah. Well, anyway, when the word taxes are ever mentioned, who ends up paying the piper? According to Mooney's last report, we could be looking at a deteriorating residential income level rating, and we just don't attract the people that are making the big money like some cities do. It's just low wage jobs that are available. And how are we going to pay for all this? That's my question. Maybe, well, we'll probably be doing more talking about this in the future, but you don't have any kind of plan at all, where Chodine owns a property down to Pearl Street, and it's all been vacated except for one building. So You got your hands full getting started with a new TIF. Because whenever the word taxes come up, you know who ends up paying the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Bessie Chronopoulos.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how smart people are and what a phenomenal human resource we have in DeKalb. Every single person that's come up here tonight, and I'm sure you've had a lot of input and emails and on the social media, and I know others have sent letters to you, Mayor, how very smart people are, the passion that Glen has for the historic buildings, and Mr. Anderson's reminding us of the history and the past, and Mrs. Verbeck, by golly, now I know why he's so smart. You really understand finances, and you want us to scrutinize that. So how wonderful and how lucky we are to have that kind of input and to have the opportunity for people to speak. Your people here are your best resource. You know that, Mayor. I don't have to tell you that. So I'll add my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. I would like to see, as I've said over and over again, more information on the administrative and project expenditures that have gone on for TIF over the years. Eventually, I think we need to work for better record keeping. This came up quite often during the JRB, and that's a body that I think it's absolutely important and vital that body meet much more than it has in the past, and that body be very, very active in scrutinizing the TIF on perhaps a quarterly basis. We need to have a clear grasp of where TIF has worked and where it has not. There's also something, and I've shared this with the mayor a little bit, a couple of us have come across a TIF expert who has written about and understands about TIF from the U of I. We may want to consider holding a COW meeting for and a joint meeting with the Joint Review Board and maybe the Plan Commission or whoever, or the Economic Development Committee, to pick the brain of that person and see what the strengths and weaknesses are. We're not the only community that's having struggles with TIF. And if TIF 3 should go through, I'm wondering, is there a possibility for that to extend to South 4th Street? Because, you know, we've often talked about the need to revitalize that area. It's an incoming, you know, it's one of the corridors into the city. The other thing I noticed, it's the Friedman study, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of planning embedded inside of that consultant's paperwork. So I think the council needs to be very, very careful and engage the Plan Commission in that, because we don't have an up-to-date comp plan, and that's a very important component as you develop and grow your economic base. And I'm going to finish off by saying something that Mr. Pappas mentioned last time, and the words that stuck in my head, I think he spoke at the last council meeting. He said, TIF works if it's used properly. I think that's kind of the conclusion that I'm coming to as I try to nitpick every little aspect of it, and that's the key, if it is used properly. And if there are instances where it has not, we need to not do that again. We need to learn from our mistakes. Not the blame game, just learn from our errors and step forth into the future. So you got a big task ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bessie. As alluded to earlier, we had 4 communiques today that were sent to the city. None of them asked to have these entered into the record. However, I will give those to our city clerk to see if we want to enter these comments regarding TIF into the public record. Herb Rubin, who is as you know, a community steward who's been very, very involved with our Annie-Glen North project most recently. Alex Nerad, the executive director of the Egyptian Theater. His board chair, Dan Shuey, and the superintendent of School District 428, Jamie Craven. All of those folks indicated they could not be here tonight, but they did issue written statements, and we will give those to our city clerk, who will then put those into the public record. With that, and assuming that there are no other public folks who'd like to speak to the public hearing, I'd like to ask Jason Michnick to help us to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned previously, the next step in the process is going to reconvene the Joint Review Board, and I anticipate that because of the work that we've been doing with our partners at the other taxing districts over the last couple of months, that we'll be able to get a recommendation from them at that meeting. I will provide an update as soon as I do have an anticipated date that will work for all of the members of the JRB, and then we'll also be able to update you with an anticipated date of when we'll be bringing the ordinances forward for the final consideration, which will be there's several steps that we'll need to take in order to enact tax increment financing and designate the area, as well as amending the existing TIF districts, because there are overlapping parcels from the proposed and the new. So I anticipate there will be a lot more information coming forward, and as soon as we have some dates solidified, I'll pass that information along.
Thank you, Jason. We do appreciate the public comments. This public hearing is closed, 6:29 p.m. Moving forward, special items or presentations and citizens' comments, item number E on your agenda. We have a special item tonight. I'd like to call Christine Lagatola, who is the NIU Assistant Director of Outdoor Adventures, to talk about the Clean the Kish event, which is part of tonight's Proudly DeKalb agenda. Christine.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm happy to be here and talk about the event that we've had going on for 5 years now. This is the 5th year of Clean the Kish. In 2014, in the summer, I was paddling the river, stand-up paddleboarding it because it is quite shallow in town, and noticed a lot of debris and decided to initiate this event that year. So it started with the capabilities I have in my program, Outdoor Adventures, which rents equipment and provides lifetime experiences in the outdoors for not only the college youth, but for the community as well. We work a lot with building leadership in the staff that lead these trips, and so a key part of that was my staff as well, guiding groups onto the river these years. We also partner with the DeKalb Park District, who provides access to the river and helps clean up some of the debris that we leave on the banks to make it easier to recycle some of the items as well. So this year we had a record year of 101 participants, 67 NIU students, and 34 community. A lot of those were 4-H and Cub Scouts that had contacted to come, and they don't go into the river. There's always an option to stay at the lagoon and walk along the beautiful new trail that we have and clean up along the way. And those that go in the river split into 2 groups. One headed north toward, actually we shuttled to Hopkins to start, and there's still a lot of tires there. This last year, we had 78 people in 2017, and tires was the focus. There was a lot of large tires that need to be removed, and so we had the access provided from the Kishwaukee Country Club. Thankful to them to allow us to drive up there and be able to remove them straight from the river there. So we had more of that this year going north. And then going south in the river, we had, oh, I have a clicker with pictures. Oh. Let's show you. Here's the group of the before picture. We try to get a nice picture. Everyone's really excited. Despite the rain this year, there was a great turnout. They just showed up right before 1 o'clock on Sunday, September 30th. Another notation of that, we always have used the fall weather to do it where the river is low, as well as National Public Lands Day. It's listed as a national event and recorded our efforts through the national effort to provide healthy and a positive impact to our public lands. And then, so we moved on into the river. So some examples here in the canoes, down into the banks. Everyone just gets right in. And works their way south. So this is the group that went south. They took out at Lions Park, so they actually worked an extra hour, some of them. So some of the groups that also were included was partnership with an ENVS class. So I think might be a picture. And then Kishwaukee College also promotes it to their biology students, so a connection with them as well. So this is the group with the ENVS class right before they took out at Prairie Park, right at the bridge. And then Dog, who's a DeKalb Park District Commissioner, has been helping me all these years. He continued on with a smaller group to get more. So just kind of gets exciting. I think there's a little bit of fun to see what you're going to find. Some of the items found includes cell phones this year. This year was cell phones, BB guns, a big detour sign, which I think is that. Some other road signage as well. A VO ride bike was thrown in the river, so we took that out. Clothing, plunger, keys, wallets, a sink, walkie-talkies, tires, a lot of golf balls going north. Still a lot of golf balls if anyone wants to start at Buena Vista. There's tons. Scrap metal, as you saw earlier. So a lot of just debris, small things that, tons of plastic and just obviously trash. So this is the stuff we brought back from the north route. So we have a metal recycler come and take all the metal, and then the Park District helps with the tires as well, storing them until the summer recycling program for free. So a little bit of that in our grounds. NIU Grounds helps clean that up. We also had a big group this year. This is the Bass Fishing Club for NIU, and then the NIU Ice Hockey came out. So we had a great partnership. So Outdoor Adventures is part of the Recreation and Wellness Department. So we had a good turnout there. I think that's all I have to share about it. Yeah. Any questions? Or, yeah.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine, for not only marshaling that. Yes, thank you. Appreciate all your help. This is truly proudly DeKalb. Moving along on special items, our Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan Task Force update continues to wind down a key component of it, but now we have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to ask Alderman Finucane and or Alderman Jacobson to address our AGN Revitalization Plan update.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll speak this evening. For those of you who don't know, that the draft version of the plan and that has been approved by the task force is now up on the city's website, and it's available for your review. There's 2 chances coming up in the near future for public to comment on this. There's a community meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the University Village Community Room, just about 800 North Annie Glidden Road. And then next Wednesday here in City Hall at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, that's the 17th, again at 6 p.m., where public comment will be welcome on that. And then sometime within the next, I think next month, we will be having discussions here at Council about the plan and anything else that we would like to see into it. I know both Dave and I have already received some comments that we are sharing with staff for that to be included in the continuing discussion.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Dave, for your leadership on Annie Glidden North. We'll continue to hear much more about the AGN revitalization plan going forward in the weeks and months ahead. Item number 2 this evening is presentations. We do have a proclamation. Is Colleen Bredesen here? I do not see her. I'm told that she would accept this, so I'm going to simply review a proclamation that I have signed on this day, and that is regarding the 2018 Sandra King Memorial Crop Hunger Walk held in October. Since 1982, the Sandra King Memorial Crop Walk has raised over $640,000 nationally, whereas the Memorial Crop Walk here in DeKalb County raised $25,068, which included $6,145 donated to local agencies fighting hunger in DeKalb County. And whereas each year crop hunger walks help more than 1,500 local food pantries, food banks, and meal sites in the U.S., therefore I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, in the County of DeKalb, do proclaim this as Crop Walk Month in the City of DeKalb. And we'll see that Colleen gets that proclamation. Okay, our next is Mary Ellen Shade, who is the Executive Director of Safe Passage. Safe Passage is one of several human services organizations that receives funding from the City of DeKalb, and she is going to provide the FY 2018 funding annual report on behalf of her organization. Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Mayor Smith, and thank you all on City Council for allowing me to come here tonight. And thank you for the funding that we receive from the Human Services. It's a great help to us, and we use it. We appreciate it very much. It's unrestricted, so it gives us the opportunity to meet a need that we are sometimes not able to meet because of much of the restrictiveness in the funding that we have from government. So it's very important funding, and I thank you all for it. Safe Passage is doing a lot of great work in the community. I don't know if you all know, but earlier this year we were named the Nonprofit of the Year by the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, and that was the first award they'd given to a nonprofit as a separate category. So we were very excited and very proud about that. This past year at Safe Passage, we have served almost 1,000 people in our domestic violence shelter, where we have 25 beds, in our providing counseling, providing legal advocacy services, and we provide a number of prevention services. So we're in all the schools in DeKalb, including in DeKalb County, really, including NIU and Kishwaukee Community College. And we do presentations in classrooms for students of all ages, from kindergarten all the way through college. We talk about safety, we talk about prevention of sexual abuse, prevention of sexual assault, consent, dating violence, and a large number of social media safety, which is a huge issue in our schools. And so we're doing all that work, and I said we see about 1,000, we serve about 1,000 people in our direct services. We probably see about 5,000 to 10,000 students and people in the community that we provide those programs to. We have a couple exciting innovations and collaborations that we've been able to develop this year. We have recently developed a collaboration with the DeKalb County Housing Authority, and we were able to work out an agreement with them and with HUD in order to provide housing waivers to the people that are in our transitional housing, long-term housing apartments, which is another one of our services. This is a huge gift for all of the people that are in that program. That's a program where people are allowed to live up to 2 years in an apartment, which is on our site. And once they leave the apartment, they can take the waiver with them, and anywhere in the country, which is pretty amazing. So that has been a huge advantage. In addition, we receive rental revenue, which has also been a huge help to us and our bottom line. The other, I think, really exciting collaboration that we've entered into and began implementation of is the lethality assessment protocol. And that is a collaboration that we entered into with the DeKalb County Police Department, Sycamore, the NIU Police Department, Sandwich, and the Sheriff's Department in Cortland. And what that is a way to figure out at the scene of any domestic violence call, the risk of lethality that a victim is experiencing. And police officers are able to conduct a quick 11 question survey, and given the answers of those questions, there's a lot of evidence behind this protocol that show that if people answer the survey a certain way, that they are shown to be at a higher risk of lethality. And in those instances, the police officer calls our hotline from the scene and asks the victim to speak with us on the phone, and that way we are able to reach more victims that unfortunately we don't always reach. And it's been shown to really have an impact on making sure there's less lethality in domestic violence situations, and that victims can get away in a much safer and better way, that there's much better risk assessment. So we are very proud of that. We're very happy to be working with the police departments, and that was just started October 1st, and we've already had about 10 calls. So it's working, and that's a good thing. I did want to also let you know that of the 1,000 or so people that we serve in the last year and the year before that, about 47% of those people live in DeKalb, in the city of DeKalb. And so we are providing a great deal of service to those in this community. Again, I thank you for the support, and if I could, I'd like to pass out a pamphlet which is a quick overview of all the different services we provide, and a new coaster that a coaster project that we are working with various bars and restaurants in the community to utilize the coaster, and it says, "A drink is not consent, get a yes," and our information on it. So I'd like to pass these out if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that would be fine, but before you do, just stay right there. Are there any questions or comments to Mary Ellen? If not, come on.
Okay.
We'd be more than happy to.
I want to say, the last time I was here, we were having a very involved conversation about our hope, our wish to purchase the hospital, the old St. Mary's Hospital, and renovate that into a building for safe passage, which we still desperately need. We are still turning away too many clients that need shelter, and with this lethality assessment protocol, I believe that problem is only going to get worse. However, we did had a number of engineers go through and did some more architectural plans, and it turned out that that project was going to be a $6 to $7 million renovation, which our board and myself said, no, we cannot do that. So we have walked away from that project, but we are looking at some different property in the city. So I will hope to be able to come back and talk with you about that.
Yeah, keep us on that radar screen, would you? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen, thank you very much. And I'll give you a contact for Barb for these two.
Absolutely.
May we use these coasters immediately?
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful, great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work. You do a great job.
Did I give anybody Sorry.
As Mary Ellen completes her distribution of the coaster and the new brochure, we do thank her for not only making her annual report to us tonight, but also for leading the way for what Safe Passage does in our community. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Thank you.
I have no mayor's appointments this evening. Our next item on the agenda is public participation, and I have at this point no other speaker request forms, nor do you have, Lynn. Okay, so we'll move forward to that. item number F, and that is our consent agenda. And for those of you who watch or attend the meetings, you'll know that all items listed on the consent agenda are usually enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion on either of these items, on any of these items, unless requested by a council member. I'd like to read these and then we'll get a motion. Approval of City Council minutes. A, minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of September 10th, 2018. B, minutes of the regular City Council meeting of September 10th, 2018. Receive and file. Accounts payable and payroll through October 8, 2018 in the amount of $3,429,210.30. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Norrico and seconded by Alderman Marquardt that we approve tonight's consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Marquardt,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. So moved. Now we move into items for separate action, and as those of you who may have been here earlier in the meeting realize that we have moved what is item number 7 in your printed copy to item number 1, and that's Resolution 2018-135, authorizing a communications site lease agreement with Kishwaukee Amateur Radio Club for space on the city's west water tower located at 1505 West Lincoln Highway, including land for equipment, rights of way for ingress, egress, and the installation and maintenance of utility wires, poles, cables, and conduits. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Marquardt. Speaking to this item is our Assistant Public Works Director, Brian Favor. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. The Kishwaukee Amateur Radio Club has requested permission to place an 18-foot antenna on the west water tower located on West Lincoln Highway. The club had previously had an antenna located on B95's radio tower located in Malta for the past 22 years. The club, or the radio station, was sold and has requested that the club remove their antenna from that tower. The club vacated that tower in July and to date has not had a location to operate from. To that end, they have approached the city with a request to place an antenna potentially on one of our water towers. 2 months ago or so, I met with the club, visited several tower sites to see if we had a suitable site for them. I think we both agreed that the west tower was the most favorable site for that. We also talked with our IT department, the police department, fire department, as well as public works, for the fact that we have a communication antenna on that tower for police and fire, in addition to an antenna for communication with our water treatment plants. So obviously we want to make sure that any other antenna that was located on that tower would not interfere with our equipment or our operations. We've reviewed the data that the radio club has provided to us and determined that it should have no interference with our equipment or our operations. It would consist, as I mentioned, of an 18-foot whip antenna along with a small base communication equipment cabinet that would be placed in the interior of the west tower. The club has been in operation since 1950. I provided some backup material about their purpose and what they do for the community. I know there's members of the club here as well that would be, I'm sure, more than happy to provide additional details if you had any questions regarding that. The lease would, terms of the lease would be for 5 years initially, with 2 consecutive 5-year arrangements after that. There'd be a payment of $400 a year, which would just more or less cover the cost of the electricity. Should there be any disruption with our operations or our communications, the lease obviously has conditions that would require immediate termination of the use of their equipment. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if it relates to the club themselves, happy to have one of the members come up and give you additional information regarding that.
I see we have 4 representatives from the club here. We appreciate their willingness to not only come forward tonight, but to make this request. It was important, I think, for the city to at least listen to their request as a result of their losing that space on B95's tower. Alderman Norrico.
Just one question. The $400, is that consistent with what they had paid for use of the B95 tower?
You know,
or relatively close?
Yeah, I honestly did not ask what they paid.
Okay.
Essentially, our purpose was not to make it obviously a money-making event. We were trying to cover the cost of what our costs would be. So we did determine essentially what their electrical use would be, which is really the only expense to us. There is some wording in the agreement that should there be a requirement for one of our employees to come in on the weekend, that they would be responsible for covering the additional costs for overtime, those types of things. So, but as long as it's during, if it's normal working hours for us, it's not an issue for us to leave someone into that tower.
And I assume that they're comfortable with that dollar amount.
Yeah, I believe they're fully agreeable to that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Fagan.
Yeah, everything looks fine. What about the installation of it? Do they take care of the installation?
Yes, they would cover all the cost of and there is wording in there too, because they need an additional outlet, which requires a licensed electrician to do the work. So they're not necessarily doing the work. The antenna would be installed by a licensed professional as well. So, and they do have insurance as well to cover, to ensure that there's no liability on the city.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve this resolution. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Norrico?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 ayes.
Motion passes. So moved. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving right along. Now we go back to that which is listed as number 1 on your printed agenda, and that's Ordinance 2018-062, authorizing a professional services agreement with Fair Graham and Associates Incorporated for the purpose of environmental consulting at 1101 North First Street in an amount not to exceed $56,100, and authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year-end December 31, 2018 budget for said expenses. This is first reading. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Norrico, seconded by Alderman Marquardt. Speaking to this item is our Public Works Director, Tim Holdeman.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and residents of DeKalb. It's our pleasure to bring before you this evening an opportunity to begin the process of environmental remediation at a property at 1101 North First Street. This is an important first step in the redevelopment of this property. In the proposal that you have in front of you, the city pays the upfront cost and then would be reimbursed through the state underground storage tank fund. We've set this before you as an ordinance to amend the budget for a not to exceed amount of $56,100 to cover the professional services agreement to get this process started. We'd also request a waiver of second reading if it be the desire of the council to approve this evening. You may know the property at 1101 North First Street. It's located on the northwest corner of First and Hillcrest. It's the site of an abandoned gas station, which was abandoned about 10 years ago. It did have an underground storage tank located on the property, and so any future uses of that property would be subject to state and federal rules and regulations regarding underground storage tanks. In Illinois, we do have a leaky underground storage tank fund, and that fund is funded in a segregated account that takes 1.1 cents per gallon sold throughout the state and puts it in this separate fund, and then it is available for such uses as we have at 1101 North First Street. The funds are available, and they have been budgeted for fiscal year 2019 in the state. Just a little history on this site. The former owners abandoned the site. The Attorney General actually filed a lawsuit against those owners and received a judgment of about $1 million, but the owners fled the country, and so that judgment cannot be retrieved. The city acquired the property based on the delinquent sales tax process. We believe that the economics and the development opportunities for the site and the fact that there is a reimbursement available through this state fund, that this is a good time to move forward. As staff was discussing this project and how to move forward, we reached out to Fairgram and asked for their opinion. In your packet is their letter response, which really identifies 3 different options. But their recommended option is to take advantage of this underground storage tank reimbursement program. We have representatives from Fairgram here this evening, including Joel Zirkle, who can answer any questions that you may have. But briefly, the engineering services that are covered in this agreement would be to develop a plan, a corrective action plan it's called, submit that plan to EPA for approval, and then if it is approved, then develop a set of specifications to hire a contractor in a bid format, in a competitive bidding format. Then we would award that bid, they would come in and do the work, there would be environmental sampling, and then there would be a final corrective action completion report done. Now, the services that Fairgram is offering does not include the contractor services. So that would be a separate amount. It's also eligible for reimbursement. So we would likely have additional costs up front before we were reimbursed by the time this project's all over. The estimated cost of the engineering service is $51,000, and we're asking for a 10% contingency for the unexpected for a not to exceed $56,100. It's an estimated amount not to exceed, but it is based on time and materials. So if the time and materials spent on the project are less than, we would receive a bill for less than that. And as I mentioned, Mr. Zirkle is here to answer any questions that we might have. Recognizing that this is an ordinance, we need 2/3 majority to pass. And again, if it be City Council's desire, we would ask for a second reading to be waived.
Are there any comments or questions of Tim or Mr. Zirkle? No. Before we do the roll call, in looking at the background material, and I know folks, especially in that area, Bill, I think that's in your ward.
It is.
Yeah.
And this would be a great first step towards
right.
People
will ask, well, when do we see the action? It's going to be sometime. It would appear to me, just in looking at the proposal, that we're probably looking at least until next summer before we would see any any visible action down there. But as Bill said, it's a good first step. Roll call.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noriko.
Yes.
Verbeck.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Markwart.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
So move.
I'd like
Alderman Fanouken.
like to make the motion that we waive second reading and approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Verbeck, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Noriko.
Yes.
Verbeck.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Markwart.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
So moved. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Number 2, omnibus approval of ordinances proposing the establishment of backup special service areas for Home 2 Suites, 1792 Sycamore Road, Plaza DeKalb, and 924 Greenbrier Road. Would be first reading. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Markwart. Speaking to this item is our city attorney, Dean Frieders.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to make a brief introduction here. As the council is aware, we have a management intern program that runs as a part of the city's operations, is supervised through the city manager's office. We also have a different internship program that is not as widely discussed. Under Illinois law, there's a process under Supreme Court Rule 711 where students who have completed a minimum number of hours of law school credit in a satisfactory fashion can apply for a provisional law license to practice law on a limited basis for a not-for-profit agency or a unit of government under the supervision of a licensed attorney. We have had this process in place here at DeKalb for roughly 6 years now. In that time, we've had 7 different students that have obtained their 711 license that have come and provided services on behalf of the city, whether working in our court processes or working on background issues for the city. We are currently lucky enough to have Jason Blumenthal, who's going to present this item. Jason is both a MPA student and a JD candidate at Northern. He is eligible for his 711, obtained it, and has been working with us now for well over a semester. Been doing an exemplary job both with our conversion from circuit court process to administrative hearing and with a number of other projects he's been involved in, and being able to integrate him both with the MPA and JD background. He's been a very great asset for the city. The 711 program we administer here is done at no cost to the city. The hours are volunteered. The students receive credit for it, and there's no cost associated with administering it. The supervision of the 711s while they're in that program is something that I engage in with the university so that the students are eligible for that credit. So with that introduction in mind, I'd like to ask Jason Blumenthal to step up and provide some background on this item.
Thank you, Dean. Mr. Mayor, Council, the item in front of you initiates the process of creating multiple special service areas throughout the city, 3 being dormant or backup and 1 being active. As Attorney Frieder stated at the last City Council meeting, special service areas are special taxing districts created for a specifically defined geographic area to provide special services to that geographic location. These services include mowing, property maintenance, stormwater detention systems, and mosquito abatement, just to name a few. In order for the city to recoup their costs, SSAs are used to any expense that has occurred to the city, that SSA will recoup that cost through the special levy. 3 of the proposals, as I said, are dormant and would not be enacted unless City Council at a later time chose to do such. The one SSA that is active is for 924 Greenbrier Road. This is to provide a source of funding to reimburse the water fund for the sprinkler installation expenses that we incurred. This would be paid out over a 5-year span. The ordinance in front of you is only a proposing ordinance, and passage today would allow staff to send out notices to the affected property owners, as well as establish a public hearing for December 10th. In the event, during this time period, owners of the property are allowed to object to the creation of an SSA. However, at this time, we don't expect any objections due to the development agreements in all 4 SSA, or for the development agreements of the 4 properties in these SSAs, meaning we should move forward. Staff is requesting to waive second reading.
Any questions of either Jason or Dean on this? It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8
Motion passes. Are you asking for second waiver of second
Yes, please.
reading?
Yes, sir.
Move to waive and approve for second reading.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Fagan, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Roll call.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8
Motion passes. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Moving right along. Number 3, ordinance 2018-067, authorizing a special use permit for a church in order to approve a waiver to Article 13.03.9 of the Unified Development Ordinance to allow an electronic changeable copy sign, digital display sign, at 1515 North First Street, Hillcrest Covenant Church. This is first reading. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Noriko, seconded by Alderman Fanouken. Speaking to this item, Principal Planner Dan Olson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Hillcrest Covenant Church, located at North First Street and Ridge Drive, is proposing an electronic reader board sign to replace their current sign there. The signs are located right at Ridge Drive and North First Street. There's some street views here showing the sign looking to the south there and also looking to the north. The current sign is, what they'd like to do is replace the existing sign cabinet, have that removed. It'll be the same size. The new sign will include an electronic message center at about 17.5 square feet. They do have a detail showing what the sign will look like. Take up about 58% of the total sign face. The 2 support posts will remain. The UDO does allow churches and schools and other institutional uses one identification sign not to exceed 50 square feet and 15 feet in height. The existing sign and the proposed sign, which will be the same, is about 5.5 feet in height and about 30 square feet, so they'll be within those regulations. The UDO does prohibit electronic changeable copy signs, digital display signs. However, an applicant can get a variance on those if they have a special use or planned development approved with it. We've had a few of those recently approved. Some of those including DeKalb High School in 2009, First Midwest Bank in 2012, more recently Bemis Toyota on Sycamore Road in 2016, and then Little John Elementary School just a few months ago did receive a approval special use for a reader board sign. Staff is suggesting the operational limitations that were approved with Little John School and Bemis Toyota be approved for this site, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Commission did conduct a hearing on September 19th. They believe the special use request would not be detrimental to the surrounding area. They had a vote of 4-1 to approve the special use permit. One member was absent. They approved the 6 operational limitations that were approved with the Little John School and the Bemis Toyota. The one that was not there with Little John School, there was a limit on one of the signs near the school itself to be only on display during school activities or when the building was in use. There was no such recommendation here for that. The commissioner that did vote against it, Barbie, indicated she did not object to the sign. She did voted to deny the petition because she wanted to restrict the time when the sign could be turned on from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's the time the church indicated they would have the sign on. But it was not approved as part of the motion. She made an amendment to the motion, but there was no second. So it was approved with these 6 operational limitations approved for it. We did get a few citizen response forms. We received one from Sharon Flommer, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, of 1623 Margaret Lane, and Vicki Novak and Sonia Wiley of 1701 Judy Lane, indicating they do not support the sign request. We also received forms from Dennis and Wanda Sabin of 1501 North First Street, Elaine Licking representing 104 Ridge Drive, and an email from Linda Leahy of 1527 Margaret Lane, all of them indicating their support of the request. During the hearing, we only had one person speak, Randy Bordages, representing Trinity Lutheran Church on South 7th Street, indicated his support, representing the church that they represent, indicate their support for this sign also, and indicating they'll probably be applying in the future for a changeable copy sign, electronic one too, in the near future. So staff would recommend approval of the ordinance as prepared. The applicant did submit a letter requesting waiver of second reading. The commission's recommendation was not unanimous, so but we'd recommend a waiver of the second reading. It's certainly up to the council, your discretion, if you want to waive that or not, based on your policy. We do have a couple representatives here, Joe Bothy with the church, and also John Kuhn with Banner Up Signs, who's designing the sign, is here. If you have any questions for themselves or me.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding this request? Roll call.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 aye.
Motion passes. I would entertain a motion to waive second reading.
Move to approve and waive second reading.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Fagan, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Roll call.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 aye.
Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you for attending. Dan, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, moving right along. Item number 4, ordinance 2018-068, authorizing a zoning map amendment from the MFR 1 Multiple Family Residential District to the PDR Planned Development Residential District for property located at 1211 Sycamore Road, and authorizing a zoning map amendment from the SFR2 Single Family Residential District to the PDR Planned Development Residential District for property located at 1215 Sycamore Road. This is the Adventure Works Consulting Center. First reading, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Verbeck, seconded by Alderman Jacobson. Speaking to this item once again is Dan Olson.
Thank you. Adventure Works Counseling Center. They're a nonprofit organization offering venture-based counseling and education. They're requesting a zoning map amendment, as was mentioned by the mayor, from the multifamily and single-family district to the planned development residential district. They're currently located in a business building, a former home located at 1211 Sycamore Road. They'd like to purchase the vacant lot to the north of them. That's 1215 Sycamore Road. VentureWorks has purchased the property where they're at now in August of 2016. There's a parking lot on the site. There's 2 access points to Sycamore Road. And there's adjacent property, the vacant property, areas to the kind of the north, and the new parcel they're purchasing or under contract is entirely vacant. That's where they like to expand their outdoor activities to. There's no structures proposed or any land improvements proposed at this time. They may have a fence built on the site in the future for security purposes, but at this time no structures, no improvements planned on that beyond some activities over there
and accessory uses. Back in 2001, the city did rezone the property where the current Venture Works is located and approved a special use permit. There were some operational conditions listed in there regarding the fact that the property should maintain its residential appearance. There was conditions regarding the rehabilitation of the property, making sure it was residential. If it was not residential in appearance, they'd have to amend the ordinance, go through a hearing process again. There was also provisions that allow, there's a current dwelling unit, apartment unit on the second floor that allowed that to continue. It's currently still there, and they like to have that continued also. And then there were restrictions on the ground sign that's out in front of the business next to Sycamore Road. So we incorporated in the recommendation many of those conditions in the special use permit with some modifications to the development agreement for this site. The Planning and Zoning Commission conducted the hearing on September 5th. They voted 6-0. One member was absent to recommend approval of the rezoning and forward the findings of fact to the council. Subject to development standards and conditions included they're listed here in the report. The permitted use in the property is a counseling center and accessory uses. A waiver to the plan development regulations to allow plan development under 2 acres. The subject property's appearance should remain residential in appearance. If there's some change to that or a major change, then they have to come and amend the ordinance, have a public hearing in front of the commission, submit the necessary plans, and come to the council for approval. If there are minor changes, then they could be approved by staff with no further process involved. Limitations on the ground sign matching the exact regulations that were approved in 2001, a 30-square-foot sign, 10 feet in height, restrictions on the illumination of it also. And then within 30 days of approval by the council, they are to submit a parking lot plan showing the number of required parking spaces. That's the view from Sycamore Road of the property, and a couple of photos of the site on the site itself. They do have a paved parking area that's not striped, however, so within 30 days they're required to submit a parking lot plan and layout, and then stripe the parking, and also the handicap space that's on the site needs to be properly signed also. Also to allow the continuation of the apartment unit on the second floor of the building. That's also in the development agreement. And the applicants agreed to these. The development standards were put into the development agreement. There was a slightly revised copy provided to you tonight in front of you. The only change in that from the one that was posted and provided to you last week was regarding the common area surveillance. There's no video cameras currently on the property. They're not planning any. So the language was modified that if they do provide cameras in the future, that they'll follow the previous regulations that the city's put in place regarding working with the police department in terms of the location, making sure there's an interlink to the police department and other requirements. So that's only if they do put in cameras, they would have to meet the city standards we've incorporated into other planned development sites. During the hearing on the 5th, we had 2 people speak. Judith Winter of 721 Kirpin Court. She lives just kind of to the left or west there of the property. She didn't object to the use at all, just suggested some type of barrier be installed in the future, such as a fenced, for privacy purposes, and the applicant indicated they'll look at that, putting a fence up in the future there. Then also Barry Wolf of 1221 Sycamore Road. He's right between the vacant lot and the area to the north, which is a new water reclamation district. Work is going on there right now. He just had some concerns regarding the work going on over there and the future ability to sell his home. So the staff would recommend approval of the ordinance as prepared. The applicant did submit a letter requesting waiver of second reading. Lynette Spencer, the executive director, is in the audience if you have any questions for her or myself.
Are there any comments or questions of Dan or Lynette? If not, roll call, please.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 aye.
So moved. Thank you very much. Entertain a motion to waive second reading as requested.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Fanouken, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Did I blow something?
Yeah, it was
Verbeck.
Was that Alderman Verbeck?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Alderman Verbeck made the motion. Alderman Fanouken
Yes.
made the second, that we waive second reading. Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbick,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moved. For those of you who were not in the audience earlier, we did remove the printed number 5 agenda item. We now move to item number 6, Resolution 2018-134, authorizing the Finance Director to extend a line of credit to the Voluntary Action Center of DeKalb County from August 1, 2018 through August 31, 2018 via the city's general fund until grant funds are received for an additional $195,078.06 for a total line of credit not to exceed $374,604.22. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Markwart. Speaking to this item is our Transit Manager, Marcus Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Staff is seeking authorization for a temporary payment of an outstanding Voluntary Action Center of DeKalb County, VAC, invoice for public transit services that were provided to the city between August 1st, 2018 and August 31st, 2018. We request approval to authorize the Finance Director to execute payment to VAC for services already provided for an amount not to exceed $195,708.06, with an extension of the VAC line of credit not to exceed $374,604.22. Upon receipt of the state fiscal year 2019 Downstate Operating Assistance Program grant funding from the Illinois Department of Transportation, the city's general fund will be credited against the existing invoices. At the council's request, we've been asked to come up here and make these or have these discussions and request this information. A little bit of background: the state fiscal year 2019 DOPE application, which is the Downstate Operating Assistance Program, we submitted that initial application on April 19th of this year. Since then, we have continued to communicate with IDOT to finalize all necessary components of the application process. However, due to various delays, we have been required to submit revisions to the state throughout the summer. Our most recent and ideally our final revision was submitted to IDOT this past Thursday, October 4th. If the application is accepted, we anticipate an intergovernmental agreement be prepared and ready for council approval as soon as practical. Council approval of an IGA would allow staff to submit reimbursement requests for the state fiscal year first and second quarters, which would cover July 1st through December 31st of this year. Upon receipt of those grant funds, again, the city's general fund would be credited. And for a little bit more background and comparison, a similar timeline occurred last year in 2017 with a delay in the application approval at state level. The city received their first and second quarter payments on Friday, October 27, 2017, for a total deposit amount of $1.17 million, which enabled us to provide the reimbursement to the city general fund, the line of credit at that time. To ensure public transportation persists without interruption, and as IDOT staff continues to work on completing the DOPE agreement, staff recommends council approval for authorization of the Finance Director execute payment to VAC for services provided for the month of August 2018, which would amend the current line of credit for VAC for their payment of outstanding July 2018 invoice.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or thoughts on this? Roll call.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Number 8, Resolution 2018-136, authorizing a waiver of competitive bidding and approval of a purchase agreement with Caris Corporation for the purchase of ortho-polyblended phosphate for treatment of the city's public water supply for a period of 1 year from January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2019. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Noriko, seconded by Alderman Favor. Speaking to this item is our Assistant Public Works Director, Brian Favor. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Approval of this resolution would allow us to continue a purchasing agreement with Caris for the purchase of ortho-polyblended phosphate, which is used in the treatment of our public water supply. Ortho-polyblended phosphate is used for 2 reasons. One, to sequester the iron, which means to keep the iron in suspension. So that helps to reduce rusty water complaints. The second reason why it is used is, and more importantly, is it places a small, thin microscopic coating on the inside of pipes and keeps metals from leaching into the water. Most importantly, lead and copper. The current agreement that we have with Caris, Caris has been our supplier for the past 2 years since being awarded a contract in 2017 as part of a formal bid process. And the agreement allows for an extension with a one-time adjustment based on the CPI. In this case, that would result in a 0.007 cent increase to the price, or roughly $400. We reached out to Caris to see if they're agreeable to an extension, and Caris is agreeable to an extension, but unfortunately they are not able to do it based solely on the CPI. They've had a series of increases in raw materials for phosphate and proposed a counteroffer of 41 cents per pound. Our current price is 0.374 cents per pound, so this would be an increase of about 3.5 cents per pound. We typically purchase about 64,000 pounds a year, which equates to about $24,000 in annual expenses for the purchase of phosphate. This would bring that cost from $24,000 to about $26,000, so it's roughly about a $2,000 increase in the price of phosphate. Since we cannot do an extension, a waiver of formal bid would have to be approved in order for us to continue a contract with Caris. Caris has been a very good supplier for us, very responsive, and more importantly, that the product itself is a very good product. So we are requesting a waiver of formal bid, an extension of the contract based on the proposed price that they had given us. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Brian, within the past year, there was, I recall, some concern regarding a couple of chemical suppliers, and I think this related to some of the lead safety issues I know that the school district has. Is this part and parcel of that? Is this one of the suppliers of the chemical that some felt was not as effective as others?
No, this is the same supplier that we have used for the past 2 years. The issue that you're raising there, Mayor, was a resident that felt that the previous supplier, prior to this supplier, that their product was maybe, I guess, not up to snuff, so to speak. But no, it's not related to this supplier. This is the same supplier we've had for the past 2 years and the 2 years prior to that supplier.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Noriko.
Brian, are there a limited number of suppliers for this compound?
There's a limited number, but there would be, if we went out for bid, there'd be 3 or 4 bids, I would imagine, for this product. I think that's what we had when we went out for bid before.
But your feeling is that, not putting words in your mouth, but that the quality of service that they're offering cancels out the need for bid, and their price is still competitive?
If you're asking my opinion, yes. I feel like the quality of their service, when you order the product, it's there very quickly, which obviously is important for us.
Yeah.
And secondly, the quality of the product itself. We've had no issue with the product, and knock on wood, we've had no issue with the lead copper.
Okay, which is a critical
yeah.
issue, obviously. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Favor.
So I think the increase of $2,300, I think we would waste that amount of money trying to go out for a bid. But my question is, do we know roughly what the market price per pound is for the poly blend? Is the 41 that's the going rate, or?
Based on the price increases that they've had with their raw product, my opinion would be that would be around the going rate. I agree with you that I think if we went out for bid, it'd be a minimal savings, if at best, and that would be potentially a different supplier that we're unfamiliar with, which I don't feel with the city's water supply that it's worth the couple $100s that may be saved. I believe the price is a fair price. It'd be the first price increase essentially over 4 years. This would be, we had a 2-year contract with them. This would be an extension of 1 year. So it would be essentially a $2,000 increase over a 3-year period, which I think is, in my opinion, not bad.
Thank you.
Any further comment or questions? Roll call.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Council.
Finally, resolution number 2018-137, authorizing an agreement with John Grotto for services as administrative hearing officer for the city of DeKalb. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Is that you, Mike?
Yes.
It's been moved by Alderman Verbeck, seconded by Alderman Fanouken, and speaking to this item is our city attorney, Dean Frieders.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, the city has recently completed a conversion from prosecuting ordinance violations in the circuit court to utilizing our administrative hearing officer for that process. The city has, for roughly the past 10 years, utilized John Grotto, who's a licensed attorney that also has the additional special certification and training required to serve as a hearing officer in Illinois, as our hearing officer. Previously, we held monthly hearings, administrative hearings, for parking violations, administrative tows, license-related violations, and similar matters. And Mr. Grotto has charged for many years a flat rate of $375 per hearing, assuming that a hearing is 3 hours or less in duration, and $100 an hour for hearings in excess of 3 hours. There are not any charges for travel time, for any of his preparation time, or for any materials. Mr. Grotto has come into the city on his own time and learned the administrative hearing software we're using to implement that administrative hearing process and render it an efficient process. At the time that we were bringing this forward, we were not sure how many hearings we were going to have. If we were going to have weekly hearings, then this would be a contract that would be approaching the city manager's spending authority. As we've worked through the process right now, what we're contemplating is roughly 2 hearings per month, so not quite a hearing every other week. We may from time to time, depending on the volume of cases, need to have additional hearings per month, or if we have a special setting that will require a longer hearing, we may have additional hearings. We're still anticipating this should be well within the city manager's spending authority. However, because of that element of uncertainty, we did want to bring this forward, make the council aware of it, and request your approval of the agreement. The agreement would continue forward with Mr. Grotto at his current $375 per hearing flat fee, and on an annual basis thereafter would be subject to a CPI adjustment. And again, there haven't been any adjustments in this fee in, I believe, over 5 years. I'm happy to answer any questions that the City Council may have.
Are there any questions of Dean? If not, roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 aye.
So moved. Thank you, Dean. And finally on the agenda tonight, new or unfinished business. Number 1, introduction and discussion of amendments being considered to Schedule C, parking prohibited, Schedule E, limited parking, and Schedule F, limited parking, Central Business District of Chapter 51 traffic, regulating on-street and public lot parking in downtown DeKalb. This is an informational item only, and we do not need a motion to move forward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to ask Community Development Director Joellen Charlton to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is the purpose of this discussion is to provide the council and the community with a brief update on the status of downtown parking, as we've been talking about for some time. Those discussions have been ongoing based on a number of factors that we continue to receive feedback on. As many of you know, there's a group of merchants that meets monthly, and various staff people in various departments attend those meetings as requested, some a little bit more frequently than others. I believe Alderman Fanouken also pretty routinely attends that meeting, again, to obtain feedback from the merchants, not only on parking, but on a host of other issues. Our police department also receives pretty routine feedback from merchants as they go through enforcement activities and talk to people about what's happening in the downtown and some of the tickets that are being issued and responding to questions and concerns about that. Also, as you all very well know, every time we bring a project from the downtown for discussion before council, one of the top items that's always discussed is parking. So we did have some pretty lengthy discussions about parking when we brought Plaza DeKalb and Cornerstone projects, and where would those projects be required to park, because keep in mind the downtown UDO does not attach parking requirements to projects that are located within the Central Business District. So it anticipates the use of public parking and public parking lots. We do have some projects that do provide parking, such as the Cornerstone project did provide quite a few number of spaces because they didn't want to generate more parking concern in that immediate area. The discussions that we've had on parking have spanned multiple years and multiple involvement of staff people. So as part of this conversation, we've included our GIS and our Public Works Department, who, when you see the actual proposed ordinances, changes to the schedules, you see the actual measurement of where the parking restriction applies between this street and that street and how long that parking restriction is good for. Our Public Works Department also is involved because they need to know where these restrictions occur and what type of signage is going to need to be changed in order to accommodate any changes that we go through. Again, police is also included because they're going to be enforcing this ordinance, and we want to make sure that they're on board with the requirements and the new restrictions that we would be proposing. ComDev is also obviously involved. We continue to hear about challenges from a variety of people, both the merchants and the residents all come to us with their ideas and suggestions. So again, tonight what I wanted to do is just give you a really high-level overview of what's coming, where we're at as a result of those conversations. I do anticipate that we will be spending a little bit more time sharing this information with others. Even as we put the agenda up on Friday, and some people saw that, we continue to get feedback, so we want to take a look at that. Simplicity is what we're looking for. So when you see the new downtown parking requirements, I think that's one of the things hopefully that you'll take note of. The existing parking regulations, you know, we have 10-minute parking, 15-minute parking, hour and a half, 90-minute, 2-hour parking, and I'm sure that's evolved over a period of years of making specific modifications to the code in response to specific situations as they've come up. This will be an attempt to do a comprehensive wholesale amendment to the parking code for downtown. And again, simplicity is what we're looking for. So highlighting those changes, one of the major changes you'll see is that on nearly all on-street parking and in the most high turnover parking lots that should be those lots most targeted by shoppers, so we have 3 lots. The Embry parking lot, the Van Buren lot, which are in the central part of town, and then the Pond lot is a little bit further on the east end of town. It's a pretty small lot. All of those parking spaces are targeted for 3-hour parking between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's intended to provide that high turnover during the day and also address the needs of the people who intend to come to downtown at night and might want longer than 3 hours. So if you're coming to the Egyptian Theater and you want to have dinner, you might need more than 3 hours. And we've actually had complaints from both restaurants and the theater that people doing that have been ticketed in the past. So this works because if basically it gives a theater goer or a restaurant visitor an opportunity to come anytime after 3 and then not have any risk of being ticketed or towed or anything after 3 o'clock, because the 3-hour restriction would kick in a little bit after 6, which is when we stop doing enforcement. The other part to that, though, is obviously we need to prevent residents who might live in the downtown from using those spaces basically all weekend long. So we have decided to include the overnight parking ban in those, so that would be the on-street and those 3 parking spaces. So between 2 a.m. and 6 p.m., there would be no parking in those lots. So how do we take care of people that live down there or people that might need other arrangements? The other 9 lots in the downtown parking lots that have over 500 parking spaces, again, some of these are located not within that central core, but maybe a block or at most 2 from most places in the downtown will be available for unrestricted daytime parking. So any business owner or employee that wants to park without risk of being ticketed or towed can park in any one of those 500 spaces a block or 2 from their location. So that's our intent for those lots. For residents, they could continue to do that as well, and the overnight parking restrictions are intended to be continued that we currently have, and that's a alternating basis. So some lots, they alternate when you can park overnight. So we're gonna propose that we continue to do that for any residents that want to continue to use that method. Again, that will be free of charge. We have also identified at least what we believe to be the number of residents who use overnight parking in the downtown, and would offer them an opportunity to purchase the downtown resident parking permit. And that would be for anybody that wants to have a designated spot in the downtown on any given night. They wouldn't have to move on the alternating nights. That parking fee at this point is still recommended to continue at $120 per year or annually. So $10 a month, that's a pretty good deal on parking. But again, we want to encourage proper use of parking and really try to take advantage of the best parking scenarios that we can. The other question we had was that certain businesses in the past have had parking permits. That we at some point made a provision to allow that. We figure at this point, I think those were provided at a time when we had 12-hour parking restrictions in some of those remote lots. So our thought is that at this point we won't need those because we have unrestricted daytime. So I don't think any business owner or employee would need longer than, you know, between the hours of 2 and 6, I don't think we have people parking in those lots at that point. And again, those would be on a first come, first served basis, at no fee. So that's kind of where we're at this point, and again, we wanted to give you that brief overview, let you know that we anticipate sending this out another time to the merchants group. I think it's our desire to see if there's some way that we can reach out to the residents. I know the police department, through their Safe Streets initiative, works successful in reaching people like that, so we will try to do that as well and get this back on an agenda, hopefully before the end of the year, for your formal consideration. Happy to answer any questions at this point.
Well, we all know that no matter what we do, we're not going to satisfy everybody.
That's true.
But with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions or comments. Alderman Noriko.
I, along with you, have gotten periodic comments, concerns regarding handicap parking. So since parking is being looked at as a whole downtown, I just want to encourage you and staff, as I know you've done in the past, just to make sure that handicap parking, we're meeting all the requirements, it is accessible, it is well marked, and so forth. This isn't to say that that hasn't been done, but anytime there's a change, it kind of heightens concerns about that issue.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will mention, Alderman Noriko, that the ordinance is currently being drafted so that any parking restriction that we're talking about does not apply to any accessible space. So anybody could park there at any point.
Okay, so that's very clear. Thank you.
One of the organizations that's already reached out to us, as you alluded to, Joe Ellen, since we posted this on Friday, was the Egyptian Theater. And looking at what they were looking for, and that is parking for their patrons so that they could park at Van Buren and walk across to see the show without fearing that they would be ticketed. Reading that request and reading what you presented here, there should be no problem, should there?
There's only one instance that they're concerned about at this point, and that would be anytime they have a matinee show before 3 o'clock. So there's just a handful. Like, I looked on their website, they have, I think, maybe 5 or 6 between now and the end of the calendar year. So let's say there's a 2 o'clock show and somebody comes down at 11 to have lunch and then go to the show. That's the concern. If somebody parked in one of those 3-hour spaces, they could potentially be ticketed if they didn't move after lunch and before the show.
Is that something that we could tweak a little bit to allow
we can look
an
at
extension of that,
We can look at that, and that's part of why they provided some of the information about how other towns handle it, and we're going to take a look at that and see what there's.
Well, I think they had given us some examples of other venues, similar venues in other communities, so thank you.
But just one more point on that.
Sure.
What I indicated to Alex was that if you walk a block and go to those 3 spaces to the north, you can park there all day. So it might just be a matter of education, communication, how they print their tickets, about where to park, that sort of thing.
Yep, you got it. Yeah, Alderman Favor.
So I'm glad that you did take care of the concerns for the Egyptian, and I completely forgot about the matinees. That was my. It could be education, as you say. I mean, it might be something as simple as if they purchase tickets online, they can print a parking pass for a matinee that maybe that allows them to park in those spots. It doesn't have to be too complicated. I think we can come up with something that'll work.
Alderman Verbeck.
Or the possibility of valet parking. I'm not sure what the costs of valet are these days, but perhaps that's one alternative for those that don't want to walk as far or are not able to walk as far, that the valet could reasonably, from a cost standpoint, help them park in one of the remote lots.
Would that include a red carpet? Alderman Markward.
Flowers thrown.
I was contacted because there's business owners who have had reserved parking spots by ordinance in the past, and when they went to pay this year for their parking permits, nobody seemed to know what was going on. And to me, it seemed that if it was an ordinance, we should have followed it until such time as we changed it. And they're perfectly willing to pay the $120 to have reserved spots in those parking lots during those business hours that they're there. I don't see that that would be a loss to the city in any shape or form, and you got another $120 for these business owners and employees that are looking for spots that we could put in those lots. I'd like to see that contemplated. I understand that you're saying that it's totally free, but why are we looking to not take $120 from somebody?
I think one of the, again, trying to keep spaces available for the maximum number of people possible. We may not have a problem if only 6 people in a business want to purchase, guaranteed spaces in a lot now. But as parking becomes more of a premium, if that's in place and we have to expand that and provide more of that, that then takes away from the employees and businesses or the longer-term matinee people that want to park. So we can look at it a little bit further and find out a little bit more, but I know, you kind of open that box once you're trying to reestablish a new base and set equal parameters for everyone. And I do understand your point about, issuing permits until the code is changed, and I know that was something because we anticipated getting this to council a little bit earlier this year, and that didn't happen. So we can certainly take another look at that.
Yeah, and I think the current ordinance limits it to a certain number of spots. And I think if you followed that, you'd still have plenty of open spots for your other parking.
This is the kind of information, too, that in my opinion, we may talk about it tonight ad nauseum, but there are very few people in the overall scope of things who are watching this meeting. What I'd like to see is this is the kind of thing we need to get that outreach to the public. Mm-hmm. If we could take this information, this background information, put it on our website, get a news release indicating that it is there, and perhaps even getting information to some of the interested parties, i.e. the Egyptian, I think it would make sense.
Absolutely.
That's my 2 cents. That's probably more than 2 cents. Alderman Fanouken?
Well, I will say this. I know that Jason has a built-in mailing list for the downtown merchants, so I think that'll be a good resource to get more of that information out.
Excellent.
But I would like to comment, too, on the reserved spaces, and I'm open-minded on that right now. But if we could, Joanne, maybe look to see like what, like there's a lot in Sycamore opposite Sean's Coffee Gourmet that has a number of reserved spaces. What are those spaces? What are they charged for those spaces? Maybe we look to even compare to what NIU charges for their reserved spaces too, just as a comparison. I'm not saying we necessarily need to go that high. I saw you react. But I'm just saying that as a basis for comparison, particularly if we see what Sycamore does.
Okay.
Any further comment or questions? Alderman Jacobson.
I know I had a resident reach out the other day saying, obviously, if and when the plaza property gets built out, that it's only going to put a further strain on Van Buer, especially if there's a grocery store there that'll be a large parking user and a high turnover space requester. And their answer, or their ask to me was, why doesn't the city require Egyptian to have a valet on its show days? You can get them from third-party services very cheaply, and it would be a major revenue generator for the theater. And I said, again, it's something I'm sure we can talk about at some point. Again, being that they are a major space user, when some of this development downtown comes, again, we have a limited amount of properties still vacant. We have new properties coming online that are going to generate a lot more residential parking and likely more turnover parking. Again, at some point, the Van Buren parking lot is a city parking lot. It's not an Egyptian theater parking lot. And while I appreciate that they're in very close proximity to it, the hope is once downtown does get rolling again, that we're hoping these TIF dollars do and these businesses start getting filled and these residential units come online and all these things start to pick up, the likelihood that that will continue on as effectively a private lot for Egyptian and their shows is very limited, and I think that's probably part of the conversation we should begin to talk about. Yes, there are other lots. Are they right across the street? No. Might you have to pay a couple dollars to come in and have the convenience of parking that close to the theater? It's a possibility. Again, I went to a show recently last week, and there was a free lot several blocks away from the theater we went to, or for the convenience of being able to park up front, we had to pay the $20 fee to valet it, and that's what we chose to do. So again, it's yet another opportunity for them to generate revenue, and it's going to have to be somewhat of a philosophy shift in terms of many of our businesses downtown. When the downtown is full, when the downtown is doing well, the likelihood you're going to be able to pull right up and park in front of the business you'd like to go to is probably going to be limited. And I think we should start addressing some of that in some of our planning.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Joe Ellen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we move along to communications, and I'd like to once again call on Alderman Jacobson.
2 comments tonight. First one is related to the ward meeting that Alderman Favor and I hosted last weekend. There was some extremely rousing conversation about a host of citywide issues, economic development, some of the things going on in our neighborhood, and some of the crime issues. Unfortunately, it was just Alderman Favor and I that attended and had that conversation. Apparently, there was some mix-up in some of the advertising, and I blame myself for that. We are going to discuss rescheduling sometime this week, and I will have an update on that for our next meeting. In terms of another comment, I know the last couple meetings I have been somewhat critical of some members of our community for things I felt that were inappropriate. And tonight's meeting was yet another reminder of an issue that I have now experienced 2 or 3 times in the past couple weeks in the city. While I appreciate open and frank public discussion and why it's necessary and required in what we do, there was a comment made in our public comment section tonight by one of our residents that used a racial slur that was wholly inappropriate and wholly uncalled for in some of their discussion, and I don't think it was meant and directed in that way, but certainly was used in that fashion. I have witnessed it now a couple times in the past couple weeks, not only that exact comment in a meeting I was in last week, but again in a conversation I was having with a rather prominent community member. And I think it's important to point out that it is certainly not appreciated, it's not acceptable, it's not what's in the direction or best interest of our community to allow those types of things to be said, whether it be at an open meeting or in public comment or on the record. We certainly don't condone it. I've never experienced that while having a discussion with a council member or a member of our staff, nor would I tolerate it if it was used in that fashion or otherwise, or any ethnic or racial slur was used to describe or otherwise discuss a topic, whether on our agenda or off. It's not appreciated and it's not right, and I think it should be called out for what it is, and it's an impediment to doing the good work that we need to do in this town.
Thank you, David. Alderman Fanouken.
David, I took note of when that occurred, and I think you and I both flinched. But I have a couple things I want to say. Today at NIU there was an open house. I was glad to be able to participate and represent the city down there. Had about 1,800 prospective students come on campus today, and hopefully we can net a good number of those to come here to DeKalb. Reminder that NIU homecoming is this week, and I know that puts an extra stress on Gene's staff and Eric's staff, and hopefully not too terribly hard, but I want you both to know we appreciate what you and your staffs do. And then just another quick reminder that the Annie Glen North Community Meeting, 6 p.m. this Wednesday in the University Village Community Room, and then again next week at Planning and Zoning on Wednesday the 17th at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Marquardt.
No report.
Alderman Fagan.
No report.
Alderman Noriko.
No report.
Alderman Verbeck.
Demolition began today on the renovated, or what the portions of the home student center that will be renovated on the campus of Northern Illinois University. Exciting to see that project get underway.
Alderman Faber.
No report.
Very quickly, the city manager search process has reached a point where we need to devote significantly greater time and effort, and this city council will do that. The application period closes this evening. I talked with Heidi Voorhees from GovHR late this afternoon, and as of then, we had 45 applications for the city manager post in the city of DeKalb. Heidi then is going to proceed with the initial review of the candidate pool, and will weed out those that do not meet the minimum qualifications. Her goal is to deliver the recruitment report on or about the 22nd of October. This will give this council 1 week to review the report before coming together at a special meeting in executive session to narrow the candidate pool to a reasonable number of interviews. Now, in 2013, council was provided approximately 8 candidates from which they chose to interview 5. If you recall, during the committee of the whole meeting that we had regarding this, a few of the council members here suggested that they'd like to see as many as the top 20 candidates. So we'll move forward on that. In the meantime, I'm asking council to think of who you'd like to include on the interview panels. You've been provided a list by our Assistant City Manager, Ray Munch, on who sat on those panels in 2013. I'm not suggesting that we don't want to go with some of those same folks, but we also, I'm sure, will have the opportunity to engage some newer members of our community, or some members in our community who are new to that process. So that is where we are with the city manager search. I'd like to call attention to our media table over here. If you looked at the signage in front, Daily Chronicle, that is not the new Daily Chronicle reporter. That is Scott Zach from WLBK. What we do have a new Chronicle reporter, Kelsey Retke. This is her first meeting recovering the city for the Daily Chronicle. And Kelsey, we would welcome you. And Scott, it's always nice to see you also. With that, I'm going to now ask our city clerk, Lynn Fazekas, if she has any comments.
Just wanted to let people know who might be interested in running for city office in the spring, that the city clerk's page on the website now includes the candidate's handbook, and this is the version that has all the forms in it that people will need, and also the signature requirements for the council positions that'll be coming open.
Thank you, Lynn. City Attorney Dean Frieders.
Thank you, Mayor. I did just want to briefly note Jason Blumenthal, that was here earlier this evening, really has been an exceptional addition to our staff, and he puts in a significant amount of time on behalf of the city. And seeing young professionals like him that are getting involved in government is a really beneficial part of the job. He's not here now, so I can say nice things about him, but he's demonstrated a lot of diligence, a lot of capability, and a significant amount of he digs into projects very effectively. He is a go-getter, and he's been a really great addition to our staff, and we're lucky to have him. I'm thankful for his assistance. Thank you.
I know some of the other city aldermen here and myself have had the opportunity to work with Jason, and I would second those remarks. I said to somebody a couple of weeks ago, you know, I am so energized by some of the young interns that we have in this building. I guess I'm energized by talking to young people anywhere, but I really mean that, and so I thank you for pointing out Jason's effectiveness tonight.
And that's a program that we coordinate with NIU, that NIU has been a great partner with us, and they've provided a lot of good service to the city.
Yeah, we are indeed fortunate to have such good interns. Our city manager, interim city manager, Molly Talkington.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to add that the comments or the direction you gave on the property tax levy tonight will be then incorporated when I meet with the Finance Advisory Committee on Wednesday. So if you really want to be ambitious Wednesday night, Finance Advisory Committee is at 5 p.m. and then you can go to AGN at 6 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you. Our Assistant City Manager, Ray Munch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an IT-related item, but Director Thorson is not here tonight, so I'll mention it very briefly. We've started to put out information on the website forums that Director Thorson had promised over the last few weeks. Those are now available on the city's website, and they've been disseminated through press releases and social media. In addition, there is a survey on the city website now. It's a very short 7-question survey just to get some very baseline information on what residents like and dislike about the current setup of the city website. So I would encourage members of the community, employees, elected officials to go online and participate in that survey so we have a great deal of information to work off of when we jump into the website refresh next spring. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope we get good input on that, because almost like parking, no matter what we do and how we refresh our website, we're going to find some folks who just aren't happy with the way they find it in terms of navigating. So I do commend us in getting that word out, and there are a few meetings that will enable folks to have their thoughts on our website. Our police chief, Gene Lowry.
No report.
Our fire chief, Eric Hicks.
No report.
Our community development director, Joe Ellen Charlton.
In addition to the Annie Glidden North project, which will be discussed both this Wednesday and next Wednesday at the Planning and Zoning Commission, that commission meeting is going to be very full. We have another 4 items on the agenda. The DuPage County Solar Garden project, we did send notices out for that, and we will have a discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission on that topic. We also have a text amendment, and the purpose of that amendment will be to allow single family, basically taking a duplex and allowing those duplexes with a common wall to be converted into basically 2 ownership parcels. We do allow that in one of our zoning districts as a special use, which requires a public hearing. We have a similar situation of properties in our RC1 district, which I know was a later zone, so we're going to bring that text amendment coming through. That is followed by then a request to actually have that public hearing for that special use. And we actually have 2 of those from the same applicant, but at 2 separate addresses. So 722 to 724 Grove Street and 801 to 803 South 2nd Street. And then finally, we do have another public hearing scheduled for 1015 Blackhawk. This is Campus Cinema, to come back with a very similar request that we saw for redevelopment and reuse of that property. So that public hearing will be next Wednesday as well. That's it.
Thank you. Our Public Works Director, Tim Holdeman.
Thank you, Mayor. We had our first e-waste collection last week, the week of October 3rd. We'll remind residents that the first collection of the month includes e-waste. I do not have a report yet on last week's e-waste collection, but just remind everyone that the first collection of the month is the collection of e-waste. Also, please remember to put out your carts at 6 a.m., by 6 a.m. on the day they are of collection. I believe that there's still a number of residents who are putting out in mid-morning, and we know that the routes have changed, and so although you may have been used to having your garbage collected in the afternoon, the new vendor may be collecting them early in the morning, so please get them out by 6 a.m. Thank you.
From our finance department, Bob Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you guys don't usually hear from me, but I have a quick update on the ERP software conversion that we have been doing converting from MSI, our current solution, to BSNA. For the past few months, IT and our finance department has been preparing for setup of the new software. This week we've been going through, or we will be doing departmental training on the financial solutions, which includes the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchase orders, and cash receipts. All that, we will be going live with those modules starting a week from today, next Monday. And while we're going through that process, we'll also be setting up for our next phase of modules, which goes live in November, which would be the water billing, business licensing, work orders, inventory management, and a new online portal for payment processing. And then the final phase will be early next year, which is our payroll and HR modules. Just like I said, a quick update.
Yeah, thank you for bringing us up to speed on that, Bob. Appreciate it. I don't believe there's any other business for tonight. Appreciate everybody who was here this evening and those who are watching at home. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There is, by the way, there is no executive session tonight, gentlemen and lady. It's been moved by Alderman Jacobson. Seconded by Alderman Fagan that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.